I used to work nights at a gas station just off the highway. It wasn't the worst job, but it was lonely. After midnight, the only sound was the hum of the fluorescent lights and the occasional car pulling up for gas. Most nights were uneventful. People would grab snacks, energy drinks, maybe smokes, and be on their way. But one night, around 3 a.m., a man walked in who made my skin crawl the moment I saw him. He was tall, maybe 6'3", wearing an old work jacket stained with oil. His hair was messy, his face unshaven, but what unsettled me most was his eyes. He didn't blink much. He didn't look tired like other late-night customers. He just stared. He walked around the aisles slowly, not picking anything up, not saying a word, just circling, hands in his pockets. When he finally came to the counter, he didn't put anything down. He just leaned in a little too close and asked, "You alone here?" I laughed it off, tried to act casual, and said, "Yeah, it's just me." Usually I kept a bat under the counter for rowdy drunks, but this guy didn't seem drunk. He seemed off. He didn't leave. He just lingered by the door, standing in the corner where the security camera couldn't quite catch him. Every few minutes I'd glance up from the register, and he was still there, just watching. Then things started getting weird. The pumps outside clicked on by themselves. I checked the monitor. Nobody was at them. Still, the meter ran like gas was being pumped into an invisible car. I looked back inside, and the man was smiling faintly. Still not blinking, still not moving. I picked up the phone to call my manager, but when I lifted it to my ear, all I heard was static. Finally, after what felt like hours, a car pulled into the lot. A young couple got out and came inside. The man by the door stepped back, still silent, still staring. I rang up the couple's things quickly, praying they'd stay a while. But as soon as they left, I looked back to the corner where the man had been standing. He was gone. The door never opened. The chime never sounded. The security footage later showed nothing. No man walking in, no one lingering near the door, no one leaving. Just me, alone, staring nervously at empty space. But here's the thing that keeps me awake. On the counter, where he'd been leaning when he first asked if I was alone, there was a faint smear of oil. Fresh, still tacky to the touch. The next day I told my manager about what happened. What he told me sent chills over my body. He told me the guy before me that worked the night shift had the same experience a week before he quit. I've been driving for rideshare apps for about 4 years now, mostly late nights. The money's not great, but I've always liked the quiet of the city after dark. Less traffic, less chaos. Usually the worst you deal with is a drunk person trying to tell you their life story. But one night last winter, I picked up a passenger that still makes my stomach twist every time I think about it. It was just after 2:30 in the morning. Bars had just closed, and my phone buzzed with a ride request. The pickup was a side street on the edge of a residential neighborhood. That struck me as a little strange. Usually it's downtown, near the bars, not in some quiet street lined with older homes. But I accepted. When I pulled up, the street was empty except for one figure standing under a flickering streetlight. A woman, or at least I think it was. She had a long coat, hood pulled low, and she didn't move until I stopped. No wave, no smile, nothing. She walked to the back door and got in without a word. I glanced at my phone to check the name the app had given me and said it aloud, just to confirm. She didn't answer. She didn't even nod. She just sat perfectly still. I figured maybe she was tired, or maybe English wasn't her first language. But then I noticed something odd on the app. Normally, I have to swipe to confirm the passenger is in the car before the ride starts. But this time the trip timer was already running. It was as if the ride had started on its own. That was the first thing that didn't sit right with me. Her destination was across town, about 15 minutes away. I tried to break the silence with small talk. That's just what you do to make the ride less awkward. "How's your night going? Want the heat turned up? Music okay?" Nothing. I could see her faintly in the rearview mirror. She wasn't slumped or dozing off like other late-night passengers. She sat upright, her head tilted slightly toward the window. But even though her face was turned, I had the awful sense her eyes were fixed on me. At one point, we passed under a bright streetlight, and for half a second I caught her reflection in the glass. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach clench. Her reflection didn't match her posture. Her head was angled away, but in the window, her face seemed to be looking forward, straight ahead, like she was staring through the glass into the back of my skull. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, keeping my eyes on the road. A few minutes later, the GPS on my phone began rerouting. Normally, if you miss a turn, it corrects itself, but I wasn't missing turns. The blue line kept shifting, guiding me down side streets, away from main roads, into darker, quieter neighborhoods. Places with no traffic, no open businesses, no people. I thought maybe my phone was glitching, but when I glanced down again, the map didn't even look like my city anymore. The street names were wrong, gibberish I'd never seen before, but the destination pin was still glowing like it was waiting for me. When I looked back into the mirror, I caught another glimpse of her hood slipping just enough to reveal part of her face. Pale skin, dark hair, and her lips. Her lips were moving. She was mouthing something silently. I turned the radio off, thinking maybe I'd hear her, but there was nothing. Just the faint sound of her breath. She kept mouthing those words, over and over, like a prayer or a chant I couldn't hear. Finally, after what felt like forever, the app dinged that we were at the destination. I pulled into a cul-de-sac on the far edge of town. Every house on the street was dark. No porch lights, no cars in the driveways, no sound but my engine idling. "This is it," I said, forcing my voice to sound normal. "We're here." I turned around. The back seat was empty. The door hadn't opened. I would have heard it. The chime that goes off when a passenger exits never rang. The seatbelt buckle was still clipped in, but the seat itself, the seat was indented, like someone had been sitting there just seconds before. I froze. My heart hammered so hard I thought I'd pass out. Finally, I forced myself to hit end trip on the app. But when I checked my trip history later that night, there was no record of that ride. No pickup, no drop-off, nothing. It was like it had never happened. For weeks afterward, I avoided night shifts. But eventually I had to get back out there. Bills don't wait. Still, every so often when I'm driving after midnight, I glance at the rearview mirror and swear I see a hooded figure in the back seat. Not moving, just waiting. And I wonder if one night I'll drop them off again. I never thought I'd end up in the kind of job where you see the darkest corners of how people live. But working for a company that cleans out hoarder houses taught me quickly, you don't just find clutter, you find people's secrets. This particular job came from a family that had just lost their father. They told us the house needed to be cleared so it could be sold. They sounded embarrassed, almost apologetic, saying their dad had been a recluse for years and that the house was a bit much. I've been in a bit much before. You walk into these houses expecting mess, but nothing could have prepared me for this one. From the outside, the place looked like any other aging ranch house. Paint peeling on the siding, a sagging porch, weeds sprouting through cracked cement. But the moment I pushed open the door, it was like stepping into another world. The smell hit me first. Mold, mildew, sour food, and that strange heavy scent of paper rotting in humidity. It felt like walking into a damp attic that had been sealed for decades. Every hallway was lined with towering stacks of newspapers and magazines. Rooms were crammed so tight with boxes, bags, and broken furniture that you could barely tell what they were supposed to be. I squeezed sideways through a living room where the path was no wider than a coffin. The ceiling sagged above me, dust dancing in the weak shafts of sunlight sneaking through filthy curtains. What stood out most, though, was the silence. No creaks of settling wood, no hum of an old refrigerator, just silence, thick and unnatural, like the house itself was holding its breath. That first day, I tried to ignore it. I put on my mask and gloves, started hauling trash into black contractor bags, and told myself it was just another job. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the deeper I went into that house, the less alone I was. By the second day, I'd carved a narrow path into one of the back bedrooms. This room felt different. The clutter seemed older, untouched longer, as if nobody had been inside in years. I was moving a stack of boxes when something caught my eye. The faint outline of a door. It was small, no more than 3 feet high and almost invisible behind the clutter. The wood was old, painted the same yellowed color as the wall, and nailed shut. It wasn't on the blueprints the family had given me. I told myself I'd deal with it later, but then I opened one of the boxes blocking it, and that's when things shifted from messy to terrifying. Inside were dozens of Polaroid photos. At first glance, they looked normal, the kind of photos you'd expect in a shoebox, faded, curled at the edges. But as I started flipping through them, my stomach turned cold. These weren't family photos. They were pictures of strangers. A man loading groceries into the trunk of his car, a woman sitting on a bus bench looking down at her phone, a child playing on a swing in some nameless park, all of them caught off guard, unaware they were being watched. And then I noticed a pattern. In some of the photos, the people weren't just unaware. They were staring directly at the camera. Mid-turn, their faces tight with confusion. Some even looked scared, like they had just realized someone was following them. The deeper I dug through the box, the worse it got. Some of the same faces appeared again and again in different settings. The same man seen at a gas station one day, walking his dog another. The same woman leaving work, then weeks later entering what looked like her apartment building. Whoever took these photos wasn't snapping random shots. They were tracking people. I dropped the box and stumbled back, my skin crawling. That heavy silence pressed down even harder now, and I swear I could feel eyes on me, watching from somewhere deeper in the house. By the third day, I couldn't stop thinking about that little nailed-shut door. It felt like the heart of whatever was wrong in that house. Finally, with my crowbar in hand, I pried at the boards until the nails shrieked out of the wood and the door groaned open. A rush of air seeped out, colder, damp, and carrying that earthy smell of soil and mildew. I crouched down, shining my flashlight inside. It was a crawl space. Narrow, claustrophobic, the kind of place no one should ever have to squeeze into. And yet someone had. There were sleeping bags laid across the dirt floor, torn open and flattened with use. Empty food wrappers and tin cans stacked in corners. And the walls, God, the walls. They were covered with more Polaroids, neatly pinned, carefully arranged, showing dozens of faces I didn't recognize. Faces of strangers, lined up like a gallery. I moved the beam of my flashlight toward the back, and that's when I saw it. Sitting perfectly still against the far wall was a mannequin. It wore a stringy wig, old clothes hanging loose on its plastic frame. Its head was tilted slightly, as if it had been posed to watch the entrance. For a moment, I thought that was the worst of it, until I looked down. In the thick layer of dust covering the floor, leading away from the mannequin, were footprints. Fresh. Too fresh. The dust was disturbed in a clear trail, and the prints were big, adult-sized. They weren't mine. I scrambled backwards so fast I dropped my flashlight, the beam rolling across the crawl space as the mannequin's face disappeared into the dark. I didn't pick it up. I didn't pack my tools. I didn't even lock the door behind me. I ran, and I never went back. The family never asked why I quit halfway through the job, and I never volunteered the reason. But to this day, when I wake up at night and feel like someone is standing in the shadows of my room, I wonder if one of those footprints ever followed me home.